We are continuing with the how-to section now with Jonas from XR Norway. We've talked about the climate movement in Norway and some of the actions that they have done with XR Norway and other groups. And we thought it's a good opportunity to go into a bit more detail to talk about what organizing such a big action entails. And in particular, we are talking about the action from last year, 2025, in which Jonas's group and a lot of other people blocked the largest oil refinery in Norway, or maybe in Europe.
Yeah.
I'll just let you take it from here.
Well, yeah, thank you. It's such a big thing. I think where you start is obviously what's your strategy, what do you want to achieve. And for us, it was just before the election. We wanted to show the Norwegian public that the climate movement isn't dead. We want to do something big and disruptive that actually see that people care. And it's possible to block big things and disrupt it for a sustained period of time. So I think just making the plan itself is not that difficult. The two really difficult things is mobilizing. So it was a lot of work to go to different countries, to go to Sweden and Denmark, and to get it out, to create a narrative and a why, and how we're going to do it, and why this matters more than ever, why Norway has to phase out, and kind of pitch that and find the right story and the right kind of demands and these things. That's a lot of work. And the second thing is the logistics. So for mobilization, I think you guys probably know that it's difficult to mobilize as well, but especially in Norway, where people like oil. Oil is not controversial and people are very privileged. So we did a lot of mobilization internationally because we knew that if we were 50 people, we won't be able to succeed. Numbers were critical for us to actually achieve something and block something. And that's why we gave that a lot of emphasis. When it comes to how to actually block something, it really starts with good scouting. So this was on the West Coast, which is like 8 hours from Oslo, the capital. So what you had to do was kind of travel for 2-3 days over to the West Coast. We obviously looked at Google Maps and kind of saw the entrances and stuff. But then we also had to take our own pictures. Like we have to get an overview of, is there a lot of cars going in and out? Where are the cameras? Where are the guards? The routines they have? All these things. And scouting is really key to kind of build up that document. And then we also went to sea and kind of traveled on a boat around it to see, okay, where are LNG ships going in and out? How long are they staying? We can get that on marine traffic as well, but we also want to see if it's 6 meters per second wind, can you be out in a kayak? What if it's 8 minutes per second? Can you be in a kayak? Where is the wind coming from? So 6 meters per second might be low water if it comes from one direction, but not if it comes from another. This type of scouting is really key. That needs a lot of time. And then when we kind of have the intel, that's when you really can make good decisions. One massive question is, are you going to like block the entrances, or are you actually going into the area and going over the fences? If you want to climb over the fences, then it's a whole other ball league. Because then, first of all, the fines, like you can go to jails for a month, and like it can be really legally difficult. But then also when it comes to safety, if you go into the area, you have to know what areas are potential explosives. In some areas, you cannot have anything that kind of have a spark. So you need a special equipment of clothes, special equipment of phone, and that costs a lot of money. So like if you're actually going over the fence, there's so much to think about for your own safety. And you also have to figure out, is that worth it or not? We decided to not do it just because it was too much and we had too much other things to do. And it was easier to block the entrances. Also because we knew that, for example, Aurora the singer would come, and we knew that would be a huge storyline in Norway. So it wasn't really necessary to do something spectacular to get attention. So we were like, it's not strategic. So kind of taking those decisions is key. And then it was really simple, like the scouting, where is cars going in and out? How many people do we need on each section? And then you just have a form, you see how many you need, and then you put enough people, both arrestables and non-arrestables, and you have to make shifts overnight as well. So you have to make kind of a plan for who is sitting from when.
You blocked it for like 36 hours continuously, right?
36 hours, yeah,
Mm.
continuously. You cannot expect an activist is sitting there for 36 hours because it's cold. So that's kind of how many people do we need, who is going in which group. And then we have smaller teams. So you are the coordinator for this blockade, and you have the intel, and that intel is not shared with necessarily others. And when we are on the brief the day before, you speak to your group and say what you're going to do. So that's kind of the easy part. The difficult part is the logistics. We also had action to see. What we really did was just looking at marine traffic to see when ships were coming, and then going into the security zone and like saying we're here. And then the police have to come and arrest you. But that's difficult if you have a boat and you won't be catched, right? So it's really difficult for the police to kind of do anything if you have 10 kayaks. It takes them lots of time, especially if you have boats. So that's really effective. There's a lot of logistics. So how do you get 10 boats from the East Coast to West Coast? That means you need transport, you need cars. And then obviously when we had this action, we needed a camp. And if we were 200 people, that means that each activist need 3 meals per day over 4 days. And that's like over several thousand meals, right? So we had to make that. So then we need the kitchen making enough food, like thousands of meals. And you need 250 people to be transported. So we had buses. My kind of key thing is, it sounds very simple to just think, let's put 200 people there. But when you break it down to, okay, we need a food group. We need 4 people for each meal. And they cannot work more than 6 hours a day. Okay, you need 2 shifts. And we had problems. We were understaffed. So it was really difficult. And yeah, how do you transport activists? How do you communicate effectively? Where do they sleep? Where do you create safe space? You know, that's really the big kind of, and you have to start there with your capacity. Not just let's make it the biggest thing ever, but how many people can we actually take care of if we're going to do this? So early on, build capacity in the working groups, in the logistics groups. That's really the key, I would say, for doing big mass actions.
And you organize a camp close to the refinery. Is this next to an urban area?
Yes, so Mongstad was like 1.5 hours away from Bergen, which is the second biggest city in Norway. And we had a friend of us that owned a farm, like 45 minutes away from the refinery. She was so nice, and she cut the whole field she had so we could sleep there, like 200 people could sleep there. And she also had a big kitchen. Everything was done there. We would never be able to do it without that. That was the first thing we did before we started planning. Call her, can we have your farm these dates? And when we knew that, that was when we could actually start planning. So like, think of these things. Don't do lots of work before you see that you have the fundamentals.
Hearing you say, how large scale everything was, I'm surprised that you didn't have the police waiting for you there. Because I think in Romania, there would have been like at least 200 police waiting for us there if we would have planned this action. I think. We have not done it, so I don't know, but this is what happened in Romania, for example.
It's a good point. We had said that we're going to do like the biggest thing ever on the West Coast. There are 10 different oil infrastructure on the West Coast we could have been at. But the police figured out, then I put up a police car just next to the farm. So they were kind of spying on us. They had someone there spying continuously. But given the farm, there was like 3 different options they could have gone at. But I think they knew that we would go after the by far biggest one. But we didn't say where it was. And when we had like 2 buses going 4:30 in the morning from the farm, then the police cars followed the buses. So we were a bit stressed that they would maybe stop us from going out of the bus. But they didn't. And there was only 1 police car kind of following us. And when we came, there was like nothing they could do because we were 200 and they were 4 or 5. And then they came quite a lot of police officers after 2-3 hours. But they saw that we are too many and we don't have that much police resources here. So we're just going to let them sit. until they leave because they can't sit forever. So they were there, but they were like, we're not going to remove you. You have the right to protest. And we don't have the resources either to kind of remove you. And then we couldn't stay longer than 36 hours because we hadn't planned for it. So they kind of understood that after 36 hours or 48 hours, we would leave. So instead of creating a big drama, they were letting us stay there. But Equinor was like, can you get them away? And the police were like, they're not making a threat. And there was also like an emergency. And we opened the blockade when there was an emergency because we didn't want to be a risk for life and health. That's also showed to the police that, okay, if there's actually an emergency, they're going to let us through. So that also built quite some trust in a way.
I'm thinking also a little bit about the legal aspect. Maybe to say it like this, I remember a friend was telling me who was part of a big occupation in Germany organized by Ende Gelände at one of the coal mines. And there were a lot of people from outside Germany there. And they were relying on the fact that in Germany, at least then, I don't know if it has changed, the police can retain you for maximum 24 hours. And after that, if they cannot identify you, they have to release you. So they went without the IDs. And simply because there were so many people, the police just, after a few hours, let them go because they couldn't do anything. And I was thinking about if there's something similar in Norway, or if you were planning ahead of how to deal with the possible people being detained or stuff. In the end, I understand that there were like relatively few police and they didn't bother you. But I'm just wondering if you had planned for any kind of, backlash, people being detained, how to handle that.
Yeah. In Norway, the police can hold you as long as they want if they don't have your identity. But we also know that there are very few cells in Norway, especially if you go outside of the city center. So we kind of knew that they wouldn't have capacity to bring all of us into the police station. So if they ID us, then we were saying we're not showing ID unless we, for example, go to the police station. And then if that was the case, then they would have to bring everyone in, and they didn't have cars for that. So that was kind of a way of forcing them that they can't really ID us and then fine us lots for sitting there without them taking us into the custody and so on and so forth. And then we said that it was a personal choice, and we gave them legal briefings on it. I know Ende Gelände, and I was in Lutzerat, and I know their tactics, and I think it makes a lot of sense in certain contexts, yes. And I think it's something we have to be cautious about. How do we actually pose a challenge so it's not just sitting there and police can easily deal with us, but how are we actually going to create problems for them? But it is a problem. If you don't show ID in Norway, they can hold you for as long as you want, and we can't just expect everyone to do that either. So we had longer discussions about it in advance, kind of find different ways of dealing with that.
It's kind of the same in Romania also. That's I wanted to ask you this question, right? They will not be able to hold you indefinitely, but you will have some possibly legal repercussion if you cannot show your ID. So it's complicated. What we have learned here is that what's really, really important and maybe invisible to plan such a bigger action is a lot of information beforehand, scouting and planning, and also thinking through the logistics for everything before you can involve a lot of people in an action. But also it's doable. It's just a bit larger scale than what we have talked about before, things that you could do with 4 people.
Yeah, and I also just want to add that we weren't that many people. I mean, in the core organizing group, we were like 7, 8 people. And we managed to get like some logistics groups here and there, but you can do amazing things also with few people as long as you have a good team. So think big, because our world is our future and everything is at stake.
If you appreciate our content, help us get the word out by sharing the videos and liking and subscribing to our channel and annoying your friends about it.